Yeah, one man's trash is another man's treasure. I had a client who had all these bits in her backyard that her husband had gathered up, and I asked her what she wanted to do with them, and she said, "Take what you want." Well, I'm a glutton for old tools, and I really enjoy restoring these old tools. So I figured I'd start with the double bit axe. The head was jammed full of the wood, and there was a lot of metal in there, so I picked at this for probably half an hour or so, and started with the chisels and started pulling out the nails and pulling out all the stuff that was in there, and finally I figured I'm going to get smart and use the drill, and that sped things up. I should have started with the drill, but you have to get the metal out of the way. And it worked out just fine. This axe head was pretty beat up, but I think that there's generally a story to an old tool, and I kind of like the stories as they reveal themselves, the little marks, the places where it's been beat or sometimes abused. Now, to get the rust off, I like using my sander with the vacuum on it, because if you use a sander or a grinder and get the rust dust up in the air, even with a mask, it just gets in your eyes and it's a real mess. So I find that the vacuum on my sander is the most efficient way of doing it, with the least amount of airborne nuisances. So it took me probably 10 or 15 minutes to sand this down. I started with 60 grit, and then I changed out to 100 grit. And I don't want to sand it down to absolutely smooth. I want to retain all those marks, because, like I said, I like the story in an old tool. But if it's just a pile of rust, it's just going to eventually dissolve. We're sitting out in the backyard. This tool has got so many old beat marks. And interestingly, this tool also has a couple of holes in it. I don't know if that was the way it was manufactured, or somebody did that to put a nail through it, or what. It's not something I commonly find on a double bit axe. So I've got it all cleaned up and polished up, and I took it over to the diamond impregnated wheel for polishing. This is something I like to do to my tools. It brings it up to much more chromium look to it, but it doesn't take out all the little bits. Now I took it to the grinder just to take off some of the rough spots, but I don't ever sharpen a tool until I'm completely done, because you're handling it a lot. Now I split out a couple of pieces of ash, straight grain ash, and I've kept them aside for tool handles. They're nice and dry now. And when I rehandle a tool, I always start with getting the placement of the handle on the head. And it's easiest to just sketch out and draw out and then work it. I used a handsaw and cut down to the shoulder there. The shoulder is the distance that it's going to drop in. But you notice I also put a couple of small kerfs on the top, showing that the angles of how far I wanted to go down to the edge there. And I use two spoke shapes. One is a little bit more aggressive than the other one, and the second one, so I switch back and forth between the two of them. And I also use a chisel. Whatever tools work the best for you. These worked out just fine. And I keep I probably spent a half an hour or so just working the top of the handle to fit it to the head. Now you want to get this really, really close. You don't want it so tight that you've got to beat it on there, but you don't want it to slip on there either. You want it to be a real snug fit. There's a lot of ways of putting a handle on an axe head, and you'll find a lot of people argue about all the different ways of doing it. But this works out just fine for me. And periodically it's a good idea to put the head on there, and in this case I tap it in place, because the tapping will leave little marks on the wood of where it's still kind of high, and it gives you a better idea. You just tap it on there and then pull it off, and you'll see where you've got to work. So at this point, you really want to slow down because it's real easy to overdo it. And getting back to why I like to do the mounting of the head first, if you screw this part up, then all the work on doing the handle is a waste of time. So better to get that out of the way. There I am using the refined spoke shave. And the chisel. You know, all in all, from start to finish, from a rusty head to a completed project, I think I probably spent about 2 hours on this. Once I finish getting the head all seated, then I take it to the bandsaw and I cut out a lot of the waste and I get it down to the thickness of the handle. I like a kind of a moderately thin handle on a lightweight axe like this. I don't like too much bulk in my hand. Hopefully I didn't make it too thin, but you know, time will tell. If I break the handle, I'll make a new handle. That's the nice thing about knowing how to do it. Working the spoke shave is really an enjoyable practice. It's very very zen-like. You know, you're just kind of working along in a very quiet moment, and you can feel the ancient craftsman's hands as you pick up a tool that's been used for, some of these are well over 100 years old. And there it is, getting close to being finished. All I need to do now is finish sanding that handle up a little bit more and put a coat of linseed oil. As I said, I don't ever sharpen these things up until I'm totally done. And that's what it looks like in almost a finished state. You can see I didn't put the edges on it yet. And that's what it looked like before and after.